My granddaughter leaned close, her tiny fingers curling into my hand, and whispered, "Daddy said they're sending you to a nursing home next month." I froze. My heart stopped for a moment, and in that silence, I made a decision. One call to my lawyer changed everything. When they came home that evening, their house keys no longer worked. But before I tell you the rest of the story, let me take a step back. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeanette Whitmore. Most people just call me Jeanette. Where are you watching from? The kitchen? The living room? Maybe curled up in bed with your tablet? Wherever you are, thank you for letting me sit with you for a while, because this story, it isn't just mine. It belongs to every parent, every grandparent, and maybe even every child who thinks they know what's best for their family. I am 73 years old. I may walk slower these days, and my hair has more silver than gold, but my spirit has not withered. Every morning I wake up, I put the kettle on, and I watch the light come through the lace curtains in my kitchen. My roses wait for me in the garden. Oh, I still tend to them myself. A little slower, a little stiffer, but they bloom for me. I live alone in the house my late husband and I built brick by brick. Not literally, of course, though he always joked that if the builder had let him, he would have laid every stone himself. It's the house where I raised my children. The walls still echo with the laughter of Christmas mornings, birthday parties, and the noise of little feet running down the hallway. I have given this house my love, my life, and my memories. That granddaughter I mentioned earlier, her name is Emily. She is the sunlight in my older years, the one who still comes bounding into the kitchen after school, hungry for cookies and stories. With her, I am not just grandma. I am her secret keeper, her comfort, her partner in mischief. She still sneaks into my room with a book, wanting me to read until her eyelids flutter closed. But her father, my son, has grown distant. Life has a way of hardening people. When he was a boy, he was tender, affectionate, always the one to fetch my slippers or kiss my cheek goodnight. Somewhere along the way, ambition, bills, and a hardened heart stole that gentleness. Now he looks at me as though I am a problem to be managed rather than a mother to be cherished. That day, when Emily whispered those words, I felt a sting sharper than any wound. It wasn't just about being sent to a nursing home. It was the realization that my own child, the boy I once rocked to sleep, saw me as an inconvenience. But I will not get ahead of myself. Before that whisper, my days were calm and ordinary. I baked bread every Sunday. I sat on the porch swing in the evenings, humming old tunes to myself. I would phone my sister twice a week, and we would laugh until the phone battery warned us to hang up. I was not unhappy. But looking back now, I can see the clouds that had been gathering on the horizon. You see, there had been hints. My son and his wife had started talking about future plans. They spoke in hushed voices, as though I wouldn't notice. They told me I should think about downsizing or consider assisted living. But I always brushed it off with a smile. "Oh, I'm not going anywhere," I'd say. What I didn't know was that while I was laughing off their suggestions, they were making concrete arrangements, plans for my life without me even knowing. I tell you this because many of you watching have probably heard whispers in your own families. Maybe your children drop hints about what you should do. Maybe they make decisions without asking. It's a strange pain, the kind that mixes betrayal with sorrow. You raise them, you give them everything, and one day you realize they see you as fragile furniture to be moved around. That's where I was, standing at the edge of betrayal without even knowing it. So when Emily pressed her lips close to my ear and delivered that whisper, it was not just information. It was a gift, a warning, a chance to act before it was too late. And I did act, because while my son may have forgotten, I am not just a grandmother. I am Jeanette Whitmore. I am a woman who built a life, a home, and a family. and I would not be discarded like an old coat hung in the back of the closet. That whisper was the beginning of the storm, a storm that would change the course of my family forever. The words sat heavy in the air, though Emily had spoken them in the faintest breath. Daddy said they're sending you to a nursing home next month. At first, I almost laughed. Surely she had misunderstood. Children hear things, twist them around, fill in gaps with their imagination. But then I saw her eyes, wide, solemn, brimming with confusion and fear. No, she had heard correctly. I sat back in my chair, feeling my body grow cold, as though all the warmth had drained from me. My granddaughter's head rested against my shoulder, her little heart beating fast. I could hear the urgency in it, as though she herself was afraid of what she had just told me. I brushed her hair back gently and whispered, "Thank you for telling me, sweetheart. That was very brave." But inside, I was trembling. When you are a mother, and later a grandmother, you never stop giving. You give when you are tired, when you are sick, when you are struggling yourself. You give without keeping score. And for years, that was my life. I cooked, I cleaned, I worked long hours at the library to keep the house running after my husband passed. I stitched clothes, paid bills, and made sure my son had every opportunity I never did. And now? Now he was planning to send me away. I thought of the nights I had stayed awake, rocking him when he was feverish. I remembered the time I sold my grandmother's necklace just so he could go on that school trip to Washington. I remembered cheering him on at every baseball game, no matter how exhausted I was. To him, all of that was history, forgotten. But to me, it was my life. I tried to steady myself by making tea. It's funny how habit takes over when your world shatters. I filled the kettle, set it on the stove, and stared at the steam rising. My hands shook as I set the cups on the counter. I could not drink. I could not eat. My mind kept circling back to one thought. How long have they been planning this? I remembered the sideways glances, the little comments about safety and responsibility, his wife's too bright smile as she suggested senior living homes, just to look at. They had been softening me up, planting seeds. And like a fool, I had brushed them aside, thinking, they would never do that to me. Not my son. But betrayal is always sharpest when it comes from the ones you love. Emily tugged at my sleeve. "Grandma, you won't go, right? You'll stay here with me?" I forced a smile, though my throat was tight. "No one is sending me anywhere without my say-so, Emily." That was the moment the spark lit inside me. At first, it was just anger. Hot, bitter anger that clawed at my chest. But soon, that anger began to take shape into resolve. I realized something important. My son saw me as powerless, old, fragile, too weak to fight back. He had forgotten who I was. When you are young, you think your parents are indestructible. Then you grow up and you see them age. The lines on their face deepen, their steps slow, their voices soften. But what children forget is that inside, we are still the same people we once were. We still have fight. We still have pride. I may have more wrinkles, but I am not broken. I am not furniture to be moved. And I decided right then, if they thought they could quietly push me out of my own life, they were about to learn who I really was. That night, I did not sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house creak as it settled. Every sound reminded me of the years I had spent here. The laughter echoing down the hallways, my husband's soft snores, the patter of little feet. This was my home, and I would defend it with everything I had left in me. The next morning, I brewed my coffee as usual, but I felt different, stronger somehow. Emily's whisper had shaken me, yes, but it had also woken me up. I knew I had to act fast. Plans were already in motion, decisions made without me. If I waited, I might find myself packed off with boxes labelled Mom's Things, my bed empty, my roses untended. Number. That would not happen. I picked up the phone. my hand steady now, and dialed a number I had not used in years. The number of the one person I trusted to protect me when no one else would. My lawyer. The phone rang only once, before a warm, familiar voice answered. "Jeanette," he said, his tone carrying both surprise and recognition. "Yes, Thomas. It's me." My voice was calm, though inside my heart was racing. "I need your help." Thomas Caldwell had been our family lawyer for decades. He handled the purchase of this house when my husband and I first signed the papers, two starry-eyed newlyweds who thought the world was ours. He managed the will when my husband passed, sitting across from me with quiet patience while I cried into tissues and signed documents with trembling hands. But more than that, Thomas had been a friend. My husband trusted him. I trusted him. And unlike my own son, I knew Thomas would always act in my best interest. "Of course, Jeanette," he said without hesitation. "Tell me what's happened." And so I did. I told him about Emily's whisper, about the hushed conversations I had ignored, the comments about safety and downsizing. I explained how my son and his wife had been circling around the subject for months, making decisions in silence while I lived in blissful ignorance. Thomas listened without interrupting, only the sound of his pen scratching against paper on the other end. When I finished, there was a long pause. "Jeanette," he said at last, "you've always been sharper than most people give you credit for. And you're right. This needs to be handled quickly." "What can I do?" I asked, my hand gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. "You can make sure," he replied, "that every legal avenue is closed to them before they make their move." For the next hour, Thomas outlined the steps. First, we would reinforce the ownership of the house. My name was already on the deed, but he advised we tighten every loophole, ensuring that no one, not even family, could sell it or transfer it without my consent. Second, we would adjust my will. Originally, I had left the house to my son, believing he would cherish it as the home he grew up in. But now I saw what he intended to do with it. I could not let him inherit something he saw only as currency. Instead, Thomas suggested I pass it directly to Emily when the time came. Finally, we would set up a living trust that gave me complete control over my finances and assets while I was alive. No one could interfere. No one could decide for me. The words brought me both comfort and sorrow. Comfort, because I could protect myself. Sorrow, because I had to. "Jeanette," Thomas said gently, "you've worked your whole life for this home. You've poured your love into it. Don't let guilt sway you. Protect yourself. That's what your husband would have wanted." I closed my eyes. For a moment, I could almost hear my husband's steady voice, the way he used to tell me, "Always stand your ground, Jeanette. You're stronger than you think." He was right. And so was Thomas. "I want everything in place as soon as possible," I said firmly. "Consider it done," he replied. After hanging up, I sat in the quiet of my kitchen, my hands wrapped around a cup of cooling coffee. For the first time in days, I felt steady, no longer like a leaf being blown by the storm, but like the oak tree itself, roots deep, unmoving. That night, Thomas drove over with the first round of documents. He was older now, too, his hair greyer, his glasses thicker, but his handshake was as solid as ever. We sat at my dining room table, the very one where my children once did their homework, and spread the papers out. One by one, I signed them. Each signature felt like a declaration. This is my life, my home, my choice. When we finished, Thomas gave me a look that was both proud and somber. "You know they won't take this quietly," he warned. "I don't expect them to," I said. My voice surprised even me with its strength. "But I won't be bullied in my own home." That night, I slept better. For the first time since Emily's whisper, I closed my eyes without fear of waking up to find my life dismantled. My future was back in my own hands. But I also knew the battle was only beginning. because when my son and his wife discovered what I had done, the storm would break wide open, and I was ready for it. The sound of the car pulling into the driveway was as familiar as the ticking clock in my kitchen. I could picture it without looking. The sharp turn of the tires, the slam of the doors, the hurried voices carrying across the yard. But that evening, something was different. I stood in the hallway, heart steady, waiting. Then came the jiggling of keys at the front door. A pause, a louder rattle, a curse. The keys no longer fit the lock. "What on earth?" I heard my son mutter. The voice that once cried for me in the dark of childhood now sounded sharp and irritated. His wife's voice followed, shrill and clipped. "What did you do to the locks? Did you change them already?" I opened the door slowly, my face calm, my hands folded. "Good evening," I said softly. "Looking for these?" I held up a new set of keys, glinting under the porch light. Their faces told me everything. My son's jaw tightened, his brows pulled together, his pride stung at the realization. His wife's eyes narrowed, already calculating, already searching for leverage. "What's the meaning of this, Mum?" he demanded, though his voice cracked just slightly at the edges. "Why would you change the locks?" "Because," I said, stepping aside but not enough to let them in, "this is my house, and I will decide who holds the keys to it." For a moment, silence. Then his wife scoffed. "Jeanette, don't be ridiculous. We've been talking about this for months. You can't live here alone anymore. It isn't safe. You need help." "Help?" I echoed. My eyes met, hers, unblinking. "What you mean is control." She flinched, but quickly recovered. "That's unfair. We only want what's best for you." "No," I said, my voice firm now, stronger than I felt. "What you want is what's best for yourselves." My son stepped forward, his voice rising. "Mum, stop making this harder than it has to be. We already made arrangements." "Arrangements?" My chest tightened with anger. "Arrangements for me? Without asking me? Without even having the decency to include me in the conversation?" His silence was all the answer I needed. Emily had been right. They were ready to pack me off like luggage. I turned my gaze to him fully, and for a moment I saw the little boy he once was. The boy who used to bring me wildflowers in a mason jar, who used to fall asleep on my lap during storms. But that boy was gone, replaced by a man who had forgotten. "You are my son," I said quietly, "and I love you. But you will not decide my life for me. Not now. Not ever." His wife bristled, her arms crossing. "This is absurd. You can't manage this place forever. Sooner or later you'll need care, and we're just thinking ahead. Why can't you see that?" "Because I can manage," I snapped, louder now, the fire in me rising. "I garden, I cook, I pay my bills, I live. Do I walk slower? Yes. Do I get tired sooner? Of course. But that does not make me helpless. It does not make me yours to control." Emily's small face appeared from behind her father, eyes wide, lips trembling. She had come with them. My heart broke seeing her caught between us. "Grandma?" she whispered. I softened instantly, kneeling so I could meet her gaze. "It's all right, Emily. Don't be afraid." She looked at me, then at her parents, confusion written across her young face. She didn't understand all the words, but she understood the tension. She understood love and fear. My son tried again, his voice low, almost pleading. "Mum, please, don't do this. You're making it worse than it is." "No, son," I said firmly, standing tall. "What's worse is a child forgetting that his mother is still a person. Not a burden. Not a responsibility to be shifted off. A person. A woman who built this house, who raised you, who bled for this family." His eyes flickered. A war between guilt and pride. I handed him the old set of keys, cool and useless now. "These no longer open my door. And unless you come here with respect, with honesty, you will not be welcome inside." The air grew heavy. His wife tugged at his arm, urging him back toward the car, muttering sharp words I couldn't make out. Finally, he spoke, his voice flat. "You'll regret this." I watched them turn away, their anger trailing behind them like smoke. Emily lingered for a heartbeat longer, her little hand reaching toward me. I bent down and kissed her forehead, whispering, "You are always welcome here, sweetheart. Always." And then she too was gone, carried away by the storm of her parents. I closed the door, locking it firmly. My knees felt weak, but my spirit stood taller than it had in years. They had tried to frighten me into surrender. Instead, they had lit a fire I hadn't felt in decades. This was not the end of the battle. This was only the beginning. The days after the confrontation passed in uneasy silence. My son did not call. His wife did not come knocking. And though part of me longed for reconciliation, another part, the wiser part, knew their silence was not surrender. They were regrouping, plotting. I could feel it. It began with a strange phone call. A man with a clipped tone asked for my son by name, insisting he needed to settle his account. When I explained this was his mother's house and he didn't live here, the man hung up quickly, almost guiltily. My stomach tightened. Account? Later that week, I saw envelopes sticking out of their mailbox when I went to water the roses. They were stamped with bold red letters. Past due. I froze. It wasn't just about me being unsafe at home. It wasn't about assisted living or downsizing for convenience. It was about money. The truth hit me like ice water. My son was drowning in debt. And my house, the home his father and I had built, the roof under which I had raised him, was his lifeline. The plan was clear now. Get me into a nursing home, sell the house, and use the money to fix his mistakes. I felt as though the air had been stolen from my lungs. My own child, the boy I had sacrificed everything for, was willing to cast me aside for cash. That night, I sat in my armchair and stared at the photographs lining the mantelpiece. My son in his graduation gown. My son holding Emily as a newborn. My son grinning at his wedding, arm around the woman who now pushed him toward betrayal. I touched the glass of each frame with trembling fingers. How had we come to this? But sorrow quickly hardened into resolve. If it was money they were after, then they would soon learn. I was not a purse to be emptied. I was not property to be liquidated. The next morning, I called Thomas again. "Thomas," I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "It isn't just about me living alone. They want the house. They want the money." He sighed, not with surprise, but with confirmation. "I suspected as much. I've heard whispers, debts, poor investments. They're desperate. What can we do?" "Jeanette," he said gently, "we've already done the most important thing. The trust is airtight. The house cannot be touched. Your finances are secured. No matter what they attempt, the law is on your side." I let out a shaky breath. Relief, yes, but also grief. Grief that the boy I once rocked to sleep would stoop to such a scheme. Over the next week, little things confirmed the truth. Emily whispered to me one afternoon, her face solemn. "Daddy and Mommy were fighting about money. Daddy said something about selling the house. Mommy said you'd be out by next month." I hugged her tight, feeling her tiny heartbeat against mine. "Not if I have anything to say about it," I murmured. Later, an old friend at church pulled me aside. "Jeanette," she said softly, "I overheard your son asking about buyers for your place. I thought you should know." And so the pieces fell together like a cruel puzzle. The betrayal cut deep. But with it came clarity. For years, I had softened myself, overlooked sharp words, excused selfish behavior. I had told myself, he's stressed, he's tired, he doesn't mean it. But now I could no longer pretend. This was not stress, this was not fatigue, this was deliberate, calculated, and it was war. Yet even in the storm, a small light shone. Emily, sweet, innocent Emily, who slipped me little notes folded into paper hearts. I love you, Grandma. Don't leave me. Her love reminded me why I had to fight, not just for myself, but for her, so she would know what dignity looked like, so she would grow up understanding that family is built on love, not greed. That evening, I sat on the porch, the sun dipping low, the air tinged with the scent of roses. I whispered to myself, "You may think I'm weak. You may think I'm easy to push aside, but you've forgotten, son. You've forgotten the woman who raised you." And as the shadows lengthened, I made a silent vow. If they wanted to take everything from me, they would have to reckon with me first. And I would not go quietly. The days grew quieter after that, but not calmer. The silence was a tense one, like the stillness before a thunderstorm. I knew my son and his wife were plotting, but I no longer felt cornered. I had discovered their motives. I had locked the doors, and I had the law on my side. And yet, the greatest strength I had didn't come from papers or signatures. It came from Emily. One afternoon, I was in the kitchen kneading bread dough when I heard a soft knock at the back door. Not the front, where her parents would have marched in, but the side entrance only she and I used. I opened the door, and there she was, her school bag still slung over her shoulder, her cheeks flushed from running. "Grandma!" she whispered urgently, slipping inside. I had to come. I can't stay long. I set down the flour-dusted cloth and bent to hug her, inhaling the scent of crayons and sunshine. "What is it, sweetheart?" She glanced around as though the walls themselves might be listening. They were talking again. "Mommy said you're being difficult. Daddy said they'll find another way. He said they have—" To her voice cracked on the last words. My heart twisted, but I kept my voice steady. "Emily, listen to me. They may have their plans, but I have mine. And you don't need to worry. I promise you, no one will take me from this house." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, clinging to me as if I were her anchor in a storm. That evening, after she left, I sat on the porch swing with my old record player humming softly. I let the music wrap around me, carrying me back to nights when my husband and I danced barefoot in the living room. For weeks, I had felt like prey, cornered, powerless. But as the records spun and the stars blinked awake above me, I felt something stir inside. I was not prey. I was not frail. I was Jeanette Whitmore, and I would live my life on my terms. The next morning, I pulled out my old recipe cards. Dust clung to the edges, but the handwriting was still mine, strong and looping. I baked Emily's favourite cookies, the kind with chocolate chunks that melted into gooey pockets of sweetness. When she returned 2 days later, her eyes lit up. "You made them?" "Of course," I said, smiling as I handed her the warm plate. "What good is a grandmother who doesn't spoil her favourite granddaughter?" Her laughter, that pure, bubbling laughter, filled the kitchen. For the first time in weeks, it felt like a home again. But beneath the laughter, there was still tension. My son was not giving up. One afternoon, an official-looking envelope arrived. The return address bore the name of a law firm I didn't recognize. Inside was a letter, carefully worded but transparent in its intent. They were attempting to challenge my competency, suggesting that I was no longer fit to manage my own affairs. The audacity of it nearly made me laugh. I called Thomas immediately. "They're trying to prove I'm unfit," I told him, reading the lines aloud. He chuckled, his voice steady. "Jeanette, they don't have a leg to stand on. Your medical records show you're perfectly capable. You manage your own finances, your own home. I'll respond formally, but rest assured, this is nothing but a scare tactic." And just like that, my fear turned to fire. They thought they could bully me with paperwork? They didn't know me at all. Emily visited again the next week, slipping into the kitchen with a folded note hidden in her pocket. She placed it in my hand like a secret message from an ally. I unfolded it and read her careful handwriting. Don't let them win. I believe in you. Tears filled my eyes. I pressed the note to my chest, whispering, I won't, Emily. I promise. From that moment, something shifted. I began to reclaim the rhythm of my days. I baked. I gardened. I wrote in my journal. I even joined the church quilting circle again, laughing with old friends who reminded me I wasn't alone. And each time I saw Emily, I grew stronger, because I realized I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was showing her what strength looked like, that even when the world tries to push you aside, you can stand tall. Of course, the battle wasn't over. My son grew more frustrated, his visits colder, his words sharper. He stopped looking at me as a mother and started looking at me as an obstacle. But I no longer felt afraid of him, because I knew the truth now. And I knew, when the final confrontation came, I would be ready. And Emily would know without a doubt that her grandmother had fought back, not with fists, not with cruelty, but with dignity and fire. The storm finally broke on a Sunday evening. I had just set a pie to cool on the windowsill, an old habit that always made me think of simpler days, when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. The car doors slammed harder than usual. My pulse quickened, but not with fear, with readiness. The knock at the door was not polite. It was sharp, impatient, the kind that demanded, not requested. I opened it slowly. There they stood, my son and his wife, with expressions like storm clouds. Emily trailed behind, her small frame tense, her eyes darting nervously. "Mother?" my son said, his voice clipped. "We need to talk." I folded my hands in front of me. Then talk. They came inside, uninvited but unchallenged. My living room, once filled with their laughter, now carried a tension so heavy it felt like the walls themselves were listening. His wife was the first to strike. "Jeanette, this has gone on long enough. You're being unreasonable. You need proper care, and your stubbornness is putting everyone at risk, yourself included." I held her gaze, calm as still water. "What you mean is that my independence is inconvenient to you." Her eyes narrowed. "You can't manage this forever. What happens when you fall? When you forget to lock a door? When you burn something on the stove? You'll end up hurting yourself. And then what?" "Then I will deal with it," I said firmly. "That's the risk of living, a risk I am willing to take. Because I'd rather burn a pie in my own oven than be served soup in a place I never chose." My son's voice cracked like a whip. "This isn't a debate, Mom. We've already made plans. We've found a place." "A place?" My words cut through his like steel. "A place to put me? To store me away while you sell the house that your father and I worked our lives to build? Is that what you call love? Is that what you call family?" For the first time, he flinched. His eyes dropped, just for a second. But his pride forced them back up. "We don't have a choice. We—" "Yes, you do," I interrupted, my voice rising, shaking not from weakness but from power. "You always have a choice. You could choose to stand by me, to honor the years I gave to you, to let me live with dignity in the home I made. But instead, you chose greed. You chose betrayal." Emily's soft sob broke the silence. She stepped forward, her small hands balled into fists. "Daddy, stop. Grandma's not weak. She's strong. She takes care of me. She makes cookies and tells stories and gardens and—" Her little voice cracked. "She's not a burden." Tears pricked my eyes. I reached out, pulling her close. "It's all right, Emily," I whispered, though my heart swelled with pride at her courage. I looked up at my son, my voice steady again. "She sees the truth. Why can't you?" His wife scoffed, but her bravado was thinning. "This is pointless." "She's made up her mind." She was right. I had. I rose to my full height, my hand still resting gently on Emily's shoulder. "Listen to me, both of you. I will not go to a nursing home. Not now, not ever. The law is on my side. Thomas has insured it. Every document, every trust, every will. It is all sealed. You cannot touch this house. You cannot touch my life. I took a breath, my next words sharp as a blade. And since you made your intentions so very clear, I've made mine as well. This house, this home, will go directly to Emily when I'm gone. Not to you. Not to be sold like a piece of furniture. To her. Because she is the only one who remembers what family means, their faces drained of colour. You wouldn't, my son began, his voice trembling. I already have, I said, cutting him off. The silence that followed was deafening. My son's pride collapsed into anger, his fists clenched at his sides. His wife's lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes darting between me and the door. They were beaten, and they knew it. Finally, she grabbed his arm. Let's go. He hesitated, his eyes meeting mine. For a fleeting second, I saw regret flicker there, but it was drowned out by resentment. Without another word, they turned and left, their departure as sharp and cold as their arrival. Emily clung to me, her small frame trembling. Grandma, are you really staying? I knelt down, cupping her face in my hands. Yes, sweetheart, I'm staying. No one will take me from this house. And one day, it will be yours. A home filled with love, not greed. Her tears gave way to a smile, the kind that lit up the whole room. That night, after she'd gone home, I sat on the porch, the cool air brushing against my face. The roses swayed gently in the evening breeze. I thought of the path behind me, the betrayal, the confrontation, the sorrow. And I thought of the path ahead, peace, dignity, and the promise of leaving Emily a legacy of love. I whispered into the night, perhaps to my late husband, perhaps to myself. Age may weaken the body, but it sharpens the soul, and I will live, not in a nursing home, but in the home I built with love. I turned toward the camera of my mind, toward you, my listeners. So tell me, where are you watching from tonight? And if you were in my place, would you have done the same? And with that, the story was no longer just mine. It was yours too.